Hey, what's up, everybody? Welcome into Tom Curran's Patriots Talk podcast. The mandatory minicamp is underway. Phil Perry alongside. Who didn't make it and why?
No Trent Brown out there.
Wait a minute. I'm still in the intro. The reason the Patriots are kicking tires on wideouts is becoming obvious. Why you shouldn't call Bill Belichick about that Viking cruise down the Rhine River. Mac Jones sure does love this Patriots offensive scheme and what Bill Belichick can lend to him. All that and more on Tom Curran's Patriots Talk podcast.
Tom Curran's Patriots Talk podcast is presented by FanDuel Sportsbook. Make every moment more.
Hi, Phil. Explain the absences.
Did we really just power right through that?
Yeah.
See, that's on me because I did get the show plan 30 seconds before we started here. Should have digested it, committed it to memory. That's my fault.
I haven't done one of those intros in a long time either where I'm doing the bullet points and then say all that more.
I thought I understood your rhythm. I clearly don't. Listen, it's minicamp for everyone. That's what I always say this time of year. Trent Brown, Tom, you might have heard, not present. Easy to miss. Apparently because of some hail.
Right.
So maybe we should. Do you want to get into that now, or should we just lay out some of the other absences? We also had Lawrence Guy.
We're going to come back to the absences, but yeah, no, you're right. No, your rhythm's
maybe
fine.
I'll just leave. No, I'll just leave.
You can't.
Should I just leave the podcast?
You should see.
Having a rough
anytime
start.
we get a review, it's like, love Phil. Wish Tom wouldn't interrupt him so much.
Should I go?
No, stay. So no Trent Brown because of a hailstorm. Lawrence Guy apparently in a contract situation. Other prominent, still no Juju on the field. Mike Reese reporting that could be a leftover injury, but he has practiced a little bit. And then finally, Tyquan Thornton, again, nary a chance to see the boy. Do you think the Lawrence Guy absence is a big deal? You'd like to see a nice fella get the money that he wants, but it seems to be a contract holdout according to Mike Reese.
Very interesting to me because Lawrence is somebody who is closer to the end than the beginning. And usually the holdout guys are in their prime guys.
A little more prominent.
Very obviously underpaid guys. And if I were to take a closer look at that, maybe I would say the same thing about Lawrence Guy. It just didn't strike me as something that might pop up this spring.
Yeah, didn't feel like a flight risk.
You know, I could look at Matthew Judon and his base salary of, I believe, $11 million and say, all right, that guy's got a bunch of sacks. He's made some Pro Bowls. One of Bill's best, probably free agent signings over the course of the last decade, maybe more. You could make a case that he should be sitting out. But Lawrence Guy, didn't see that coming.
Trent Brown is not sitting out as far as we can tell. He plays left tackle for the Patriots. The Patriots signed him back as a right tackle because they ostensibly had Isaiah Wynn at the left tackle. Then last year we saw those two flip. So now Trent Brown, who made plenty of money with the Las Vegas Raiders and then came back here after washing out there, played left tackle for right tackle money last year. Short money too. He's a guy you could see holding out. However, we are told that it was a hailstorm that sidetracked Big Trent. I'll say this, too. Hailstorm, mechanical issues, landing gear wouldn't come up, anything like that. Bill Belichick, the Bill Belichick that I knew, would say, I mean, why are we waiting till the very last flight when a hailstorm can sidetrack everything? I mean, Malcolm Butler got castigated for this, didn't he, a couple years ago?
I feel like he did. I vaguely remember a similar situation coming up with Malcolm Butler. This would not be an excused absence, correct?
Right.
And Bill Belichick was asked specifically by Mike Reese, and he excused absences, and he said, we're working through some things. So my guess is Trent Brown shows up. First of all, what's his weight? That's always the question with Trent Brown when he shows up because they want him at a certain weight. So you already might be looking at some missed practice time just to get the guy where you want him physically. Is there any further punishment? Is he not allowed to get out on the field for mandatory minicamp?
If every footfall causes a dent in the turf, then we're probably not going to see him running sprints. But he's a problem. Great player, but he's a problem.
It's just
not a great player.
You can't be
he's got great talent.
And you can't be selling this and I'm not saying anybody is, but if you're just looking at this and saying, oh, weather, what's the guy going to do? That's not how Bill Belichick's going to see it.
Yeah.
from what we know of Bill Belichick. Now, maybe he looks at his tackle position, Tom, and he says, it's so bad there, we got to get Trent out as soon as possible, and he's got to understand the offense, and we got to hit the ground running in training camp. We can't afford any more missed time. He didn't come to any of the optional stuff. So it sucks, and I'm not happy, but just get him out on the field.
It's funny, these guys do have the talent, does put Bill over a barrel, because you can hardline it and say, you know what, that's not our culture, where we have guys just show up and not be active when they do show up because they're not in proper conditioning. I'll just put Connor McDermott out there. Well, your offensive line, in addition to the coaching, but the offensive line held the Patriots' fortunes hostage last year too. You couldn't make use of your tight ends. You couldn't make use of your wide receivers. You couldn't make use of your quarterback because he didn't have enough protection. So message sending with Trent Brown, because he might not be in shape. And again, he might come in here looking like Adonis and jogged here. Maybe that's what they were working through.
Maybe he's still en route.
Yeah, he jogged here.
Said, oh, might as well get on my horse.
So imagine being the Trent Brown horse.
I think he does actually own horses.
Really?
Yeah, I think he's a horse guy.
Oh, those things have swaybacks. You can't really hardline players here in this organization if you're Bill Belichick right now, because you don't have the feeling of omnipotence that you did before, because you don't have Tom Brady. You don't have a lot of guys who were top of their position around the league.
And you need that group to be good. And you need them to be good early. We know that, again, it's a long way, which he told me today, Bill Belichick did during his press conference. We're a long way off from September, essentially, is how he put it. But September is going to really matter quite a bit for this team. This isn't the old Patriots where you could go 2-2 in September and be fine and still win 11 games and win the division. That's just not how it's going to work anymore. So at what point does the off-season stuff really start to kick in? And at what point, if you're missing stuff in the spring, is it impacting you in the summer, which then in turn is impacting you in September? And if you hit the ground running by October, that's great, but you might have lost a game that you should have won in the first 4 weeks of the season that might prevent you from making the postseason. That's sort of where this team is right now. I know that feels like a long way off, but everything matters. The margin for error is very slim.
We were all a bunch of jerks last year for pushing Bill on who's the play caller, what are you doing, how's this fitting together, what's it going to be? And, he was rolling his eyes and clucking and talking about
what are you talking about?
Play calling.
Play calls in minicamp.
So they still didn't have it even close to figured out by August. So it's wild, the urgency that sometimes doesn't exist with Bill, as he says it's going to work itself out. And then we've seen it not work itself out, as in last year. Aside from the tackle position, though, and aside from Trent Brown's availability, the position that I thought was better than him starting to realize is wide receiver. Because it's put together, the way I looked at it optimistically was, hey, you get this nice complementary set of 5 different guys. None of them are off the charts good, but they all have skills that if you put them all out there on the field together or have them at your disposal, you're going to be able to really do some damage. What I was a little naive on was their vulnerability in terms of their durability. We saw no Juju Smith-Schuster. Well, we didn't see Juju Smith-Schuster. We should say it that way. We didn't see him out there today. Mike Reese reporting that he continues to deal with an injury from the playoffs last year, although Phil points out that there has been participation, Mac Jones said, with Juju.
And so he's practiced. The team, even someone reminded me today, John Zanis, CLNS, reminded me today that the team posted a picture of Juju Smith practicing earlier in the OTAs. I think it was a May 23rd session. So they had him out there for one of the first spring practices, and now they don't. So is that just managing something from the playoffs? Does that mean something from the playoffs popped back up during that practice, and now he can't practice? It sounds like he is here at the facility, and Mac Jones went on and on today about some of the things they can talk about, what he likes, what he doesn't like, how he's gathering intel on the offense, which is new to him. But you need to be available. Again, I feel like for both of us, our philosophies on what matters for a football team in the offseason, it all comes directly from the guy who's still running the football team here. So it's hard for me to be beaten over the head with, the OTAs matter and you want good participation and everything matters and availability is the most important ability. And then when a guy misses a bunch of time, you just sort of shrug your shoulders and say, well, we're a long way off for September.
Yeah,
okay.
Especially when the guy that you're specifically replacing, is someone who'd been in the system in Jacoby Myers for 4 seasons, had been ridiculously productive for 3 of those seasons, and was always available. I mean, I don't have it open, but he was not an injury-prone guy. And if he was injury-prone, or if he did suffer injuries, he was generally still out there. So you have a direct replacement who's unavailable, and that blows for the team.
And it just shows up. It's so clear on the practice field. And I just wrote about this for NBCSportsBoston.com. But when you have, in the first competitive period of practice today, the receivers out there with the first team, and they went with 12 personnel, which is clearly going to be featured for the Patriots this year. So Mike Gesicki and Hunter Henry at tight end, and Devontae Parker and Kendrick Bourne at receiver. Okay, 2 capable NFL players there. The second team gets on the field with Bailey Zappi, same competitive 7-on-7 period, and the receivers are Raleigh Webb and Trey Nixon. And you go beyond that, okay, Pop Douglas is getting some valuable reps. He's a 6th-round rookie. Malik Cunningham is an undrafted rookie quarterback who told reporters today that the only reason he's functioning at receiver is because he's, quote, going off pure athleticism. And, Ed Lee is signed off the street, and he's opened our eyes on occasion during these spring practices, but he was signed off the street basically last week as an undrafted rookie. When those guys are the guys that are getting a lot of the work, you get a sense for just how thin this group is and how badly needed, in my opinion, somebody like DeAndre Hopkins is for this particular position group.
Which, again, brings us back to Tyquan Thornton, who is nursing reportedly a soft tissue injury. And it brings into focus. I mentioned 1,000 times, Tyquan Thornton's going to be the guy. He's going to have a huge leap in year 2. Don't worry about them not taking a receiver. He's a 2nd-round pick. That's your receiver right there. Put that in your pipe and smoke it, you yahoos. Well, he's not out there. So, incrementally, I'm moving Phil out of the position where he is driving the DeAndre Hopkins bus, and I'm about to put a little handkerchief of formaldehyde over Phil's face, toss him on the floor, and I'm driving the DeAndre Hopkins bus now. I'm the captain now.
Yeah, well, and isn't it telling, like, somewhere on that bus are Bill Belichick and Mac Jones and Kendrick Bourne last week. They're all talking about it now.
Let's hear from both Mac Jones first and then Bill Belichick on DeAndre Hopkins. Again, this is why Bill will never be in charge of planning your Viking cruise down the Rhine.
Yeah, I think that's definitely a hypothetical, but I think DeAndre is a great player. I mean, you watch his film from, college all the way through the NFL. He's done a great job. So, obviously, we'd love to have him, but we do have a great group of guys, and we just know that we want to win. And I know that all the guys feel the same way. But I've been really pleased with the playmakers that we have on our team. Like we've come out here and really bought into the system, and that'll really show in training camp and preseason and stuff. It's sometimes hard to show that out here, but I've been really pleased with the tight ends, running backs, and all the receivers, the young guys, the old guys, like DP and everybody. So we have a good group, and definitely feel like we just need to keep growing together, and whoever's in that room, we're going to try and dominate together.
So I'm not really a travel agent here. I'm not going to say it's going to happen here or not going to happen, or whatever. There's a lot of other stuff going on that I'm not directly involved in, and so I'm not going to say anything, and then you turn around and say, oh, I misled you in some way, because that's not what I'm going to do.
So we're in a holding pattern. We're in a hailstorm here on DeAndre Hopkins. We don't know yet what situation will arise from this, but they're almost shit. Now I've gone from they don't need him to it's overspend time.
How quickly, or how the tables turn.
How the turntables.
How do the turntables?
So,
Re-rack that, John. How the turntables. So the fact, I think, listen, this is a good thing. Patriots fans out there who want DeAndre Hopkins, anybody out there who thinks offense is important in today's NFL, the head coach is acknowledging that they're interested in DeAndre Hopkins, that they've talked about having him in for a meeting. Whether or not that happens, he's not a travel agent. Don't ask him. But this is the head coach acknowledging some shortcomings at what has become one of the most important positions in the sport, when I think people have been, I don't know if their anger has been misplaced, because he has tried to add receiver talent in the past, just hasn't gone well. N'Keal Harry, Mohamed Sanu and Antonio Brown, all just in 2019 alone, all major flops at that position. But he does believe it's important, and he believes talent there is important, and they're trying to get a guy. That, I think, is, you don't want to give him a round of applause, throw him a parade for just being interested in some receiver talent, but I think that's movement. I'm not sure, based on how some of these drafts have played out, when receiver has clearly been a position of need and they've waited on it, or they haven't invested at all, I think people look at that sometimes and they say, well, he doesn't care. No, he does. He does. And they're trying to make something happen here this week.
There's no way they should have taken a receiver instead of Christian Gonzalez.
No.
This year.
No. Agreed.
Okay. Just didn't know if you moved on that. Phil, you highlighted some sound from Mac Jones, who we met with. Won't talk to him again until training camp, but on Mac feeling so much better about the offense.
There's things that pop up in practice, issues, and we just try to fix them on the run, or we have tools to do that. So it's all about your toolbox, and that's what's so great about the system is just you use it as a quarterback. Obviously, the most is put on you, but that's a good thing because you have tools to kind of fix it.
What hit your ear about that was the end portion, huh? Where he talked about having the tools to fix things as they come up, as opposed to what he was seeing last year that you kind of detailed as the offseason went along.
Yeah, last year around this time and early into training camp, I'd reported on multiple different occasions that the offense had changed to the point where they had removed a lot of the decision-making power for the quarterback. And that was, I think, the end game for that, and the thought process behind that was, well, it's all well and good that we have a very smart quarterback. We did when Tom was here too, but it's just so damn hard for everybody else that we got to simplify things for everybody else. Maybe not necessarily the quarterback, but if the quarterback can get on board with this, then it makes everybody else's job easier. And I think what the offense felt was they would get to the line and be presented with a problem that they didn't have covered, that they didn't have an answer to, that they couldn't check out of. Because again, the problem-solving power had been sort of sapped at that quarterback position. It sounds now, Tom, like it's back.
Okay. It's interesting because if it is back, that means that Bill Belichick has done a 180 from what he wanted to, or maybe he's just shut the shade and said, you guys go do what you want to over there. I don't want to watch.
I find this interesting too because I think, Bill Belichick, I remember him telling us last spring, we had one offense for 20 years. There's a lot of volume there, is essentially the kind of things he would say to us. And so streamlining. Remember the word streamlining was the word he used on how they wanted to adjust the offense. And I remember at the time thinking to myself, well, they're not the only offense that runs a Patriots style offense. Bill O'Brien's a great example of it. Bill O'Brien left the Patriots, went to Penn State, and was teaching college freshmen how to play offense. So there was a way to streamline it without completely shredding every page of the playbook, which is sort of what it felt like they did last year. And they went to this West Coast system, this Shanahan-style system with a new language, new protections, the whole deal. So now they've brought Bill O'Brien back, who clearly has experience in the Tom Brady offense, and then a version of that was stripped down to the point that college freshmen, again, or the Houston Texans, or
Alabama.
Maybe, plays that traveled with him to Alabama. They have their own offense, but I'm sure he had his own influence and some of the stuff that they did there. He's sort of the perfect guy to simplify the old school Patriots offense. So another reason why it's good they have him.
Good they have him, and why is it good that the Patriots have Bill Belichick? We asked Mac Jones that. Basically, Phil and I talked briefly. It's an opportunity for Mac to squish the conversation that remains persistent about where is the relationship between Bill and Mac. So you figure you just lob this up here, which Phil does. We'll include the question. And Mac will say, well, obviously he's the greatest coach of all time. Here's Phil on Mac on Bill.
How much are you working with Bill Belichick behind the scenes?
Yeah, I think we have a great coaching staff and been really blessed to work with some great coaches. I always talk about high school and college and here, so I always try to learn stuff from everybody and ask questions, and OB's done a great job with that. Coach Belichick's done a great job, so definitely just want to learn and be a sponge. That's all I can do, right? And just pick his brain about defense because he's really good with the defensive side of the ball and learning that part of it because, that's really what he does really, really well. So it's been great to learn from him and the players too. Like you learn so much from guys like AP and the older guys, Duggar and everybody, just talking with them like, hey, did that trick you or not? It's OTA, so you kind of just play around with some things and try new things. It's kind of just take a little bit of everything. So, yeah, it's been good.
All right, so I've lamented the fact that this is a story. Now I'm going to lament the fact that they don't just diffuse the thing because it makes it seem like it is a story, which I don't think it's a story. Phil? I mean, he made it hard. He put the lines out there for us to read between instead of erasing them. Help me with that.
Well, do you not think it's a story because it's not going to impact the product on the field?
I think so. I think it's two-tiered. I don't think it's a story because we don't have smoking gun evidence of them reviling each other. I think it can be temporary, even if Bill is making him sing for his supper on the field. I think that it can be fixed by success. And I think that they can have success on the field, great success, even if Bill ends up having to give grudging appreciation to Mac. So, yeah, those are the reasons I don't think there's enough evidence that Bill's doing anything unusual, and I don't alternately think Bill's going to cut off his nose to spite his face by effing with Mac. But on the other hand, too, you got a guy who can hold a grudge. And when Mac says something like, I mean, I've played for a lot of great coaches, high school. I mean, you just put him in the same bucket, Mac. A guy who's living in a bucket with Vince Lombardi and Bill Walsh and Pop Warner and whoever else with your high school coach. Phil?
I find this interesting for a few different reasons. Just because there's been so much left unsaid this offseason, right? And we've railed against it at times, but the whole storyline of Bill Belichick not even saying Mac Jones's name, or what he said the day after the season ended, where Mac can play in this league, and sort of put the period there and left it at that. And now again,
I guess Mac can play in this league is the one that's the most overt,
and just the unwillingness to give him any kind of praise that a head coach would, I think, at some point heap upon his projected starting quarterback. Now, maybe in Bill Belichick's mind, he doesn't know who his starting quarterback is going to be, and they got to have a first-team guy out there at these practices, but it's still, up for debate. We could talk about how the quarterback reps were sort of divvied up today, which I found a little bit interesting. But there's now this other part of it where Mac Jones, this is the other part that I found interesting, was Mac Jones, it felt like just last week, Tom, had a bit of a mea culpa, where he said he wants to be, better as a player and a person, and he wants to be a good leader for this team. And I thought he was sort of acknowledging some of his shortcomings last year, and he wanted to improve on that. Maybe the mea culpa was directed at the teammates specifically and not necessarily at the guys on the sideline, because again, we're reading between the lines, and he did say Bill Belichick has done a great job at that, quote unquote, at that, which meant answering some of the questions that I think he had for him, and he praised his ability to teach him defense.
But he overtly mentioned Bill Belichick as a defensive coach. Of course he is. He's a defensive coach. Everyone knows that. But he spent a big chunk of last year tutoring Mac on offense. See, I don't know if we're doing a disservice or not highlighting it.
When Mac Jones points out, that's really what he really does really, really well. And that's how he says it.
He's contrasting.
I have the quote written here. I know the people just listen to it, but that's all I can do, right? He's talking about being a sponge. That's all I can do, right? And just pick his brain about defense, because he's really good with the defensive side of the ball and learning that part of it, because that's really what he does really, really well.
And that requires us to then say, aha, when that might be totally unfair. And if we were married to Mac Jones, which we're not, and I don't think ever will be, and you said, aha, but why didn't you say?
It just implies that he does other stuff not as well.
Right, exactly. And then he'd say, how needy are you, honey? I can't praise one thing, and if I don't praise something else, I want a divorce.
But your bottom line is, if there is a thing there, and I think it's I won't say safe to assume because I don't know. But if there is a thing there, you're saying it's still not really a story because it can be overcome with some success, and it's not going to necessarily impact how well these games go for them.
Yeah, and I just think that it's not a story, speculation that something might be amiss by inferring things that weren't said makes it harder for me to say, hey, there's a story here. But it does when you pose a question that gives him, here, I'm going to give you this little soft toss right up here, right at your belt. Just smash it out of the park if you want to.
Wherever you want to go with it.
Yep, take it out to right field, take it right back up the middle, shoot the box, right into the kitchen. But if you pass on that opportunity and you know that it has been a topic, then you're specifically saying, yeah, I'm not doing that. I'm not open in that vein. Or maybe you don't even friggin' know the people are wringing their hands about it.
I think, unfortunately for them, we have in some ways over the course of the last year or so been conditioned to read between the lines because of the way things have played out here.
Yeah, you're right.
Okay. And just the way that, the head coach in particular handles how open he is with us. So it's sort of become part of the job.
You're right.
Sadly.
You're right. The Belichick to reality translator that you constantly have to pass everything through. Like, he's not a travel agent, but would he perhaps entertain something in the travel industry? I mean,
is he aware of any part of the schedule here at Gillette Stadium?
I mean,
I would think so. So,
I mean, the 2 OTA losses makes you wonder. All right. Any other observations?
I think we covered it.
All right. Maybe we should do another news tomorrow.
We got the offense. We got the head coach and the quarterback. Oh, a last thing, because I did tease it a little bit. Just how the quarterback reps were split, because I think people found this somewhat interesting during one of the previous OTA sessions. They did the thing again, and it wasn't throughout practice, but they did the thing again where they have Mac Jones as the first-team quarterback with the very obvious first-teamers, regulars. And then they went with Trace McSorley as the second guy with a complement of offensive players, most of whom the average fan would not know.
Right.
And then they went with Bailey Zappi third, thereby providing rest for other starters like Devontae Parker, Kendrick Bourne, Cole Strange. Calvin Anderson has been their left tackle basically all through the spring here, giving them the rest they need during the McSorley period so that then they can get back on the field after having played with Mac Jones to play with Bailey Zappi. Do you read into that at all? Does that mean there's a competition afoot because this is the way Bill Belichick would do it? He wouldn't just have first team, second team. He would have Bailey Zappi go third, kind of throw us off the scent, but going with a bunch of starters. Not all of the same starters, but a good chunk of them.
I don't think that's necessarily an orchestrated competition. Hey, let's see what happens here. Let's compare these reps to Max, which I would add Max reps with that group were better.
And far more extensive. This was really, from what I could tell, one of the competitive periods. There were 3 or 4 maybe competitive periods, and this really happened in one of the 11-on-11
So my
periods.
tendency to underplay everything would lead me to say, well, of course you're going to have the second-string quarterback play with the one sometimes. He might be out there with them.
Right.
In case Calvin Anderson misses a block. Trent Brown gets caught in a hailstorm for a flight to Pittsburgh or something. All right, Squeeze in the Psychedelic Furs, September 12th at 7:30 p.m. It's the Wang Theater. First concert I ever saw was Squeeze. I was in the 5th row at the Orpheum Theater. How do you like that?
Wow, what year?
1983. What was your first concert? No, 1985 maybe. Right before I went to school, 1985. College.
My first concert, I think, was my sophomore year of high school. It was John Mellencamp, believe it or not, at the Tweeter Center.
I was supposed to go see Huey Lewis in the News up at St. A's.
That would have been a lot of fun. What happened there?
Death in the family.
Hailstorm? Oh, sorry.
That's all right.
You want to know what my second concert was?
It was tough to be kicking rocks about somebody ruining my concert, though. Because, you're 17, you want to go to see I Want a New Drug.
You don't get it.
And I'm like, oh, come on.
I saw
She
Justin.
couldn't make it another week.
I saw Justin Timberlake and Christina Aguilera. That might have been
Those are big
junior
guns.
year
At G-Town?
of high school. That was at the Garden. That was what did they call that?
TD Bank North?
No, it was something sort of. There was some innuendo, I think, in the concert name. It was sort of when Christina Aguilera was going through a little bit of a rebellious phase.
Uh-huh.
Ex-Tina.
I'm
going to look this up now.
Well, I'm smart enough to not even start making suggestions. So we got Squeeze and the Psychedelic Furs. I'd like to go see that. Elvis Costello is playing a number of places. I'd like to go see that. Van Morrison is at the Schubert Theater August 31st. Cake is coming around. I would have liked to go see AJR this past weekend, but I didn't bother. Because I like talking about going to concerts much more than I like going to concerts.
The Justified and Stripped Tour is what it was called.
That is a little off color.
2003.
2003. Huh. How old were you?
Junior year high school.
Wow. I had 3 kids.
I saw Coolio twice in college. Can you believe that? R.I.P. Once overseas, studying abroad.
So I'm in Italy?
Mm-hmm.
That
Florence,
must be
Italy.
cool.
At Yab. Young and Beautiful.
Wow.
Was the name of the club.
Oh, was it a club?
And then they had him at Georgetown. He played in the cafeteria at Georgetown. Like 6 months
That's
later.
no gangster's paradise. All right. We're
Nice.
going to let you guys go. Talk to you tomorrow. We'll do another quickie. Bye.